Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm your host Ade Darame, and here to go through some wonderful stories I have friend and colleague Mahmoud Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, welcome to the program.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ade. And the echoes and the attire,
almost
quite extraordinary. And it wasn't planned.
It wasn't planned
just
at all. And I must apologize to the viewers that this week we don't have Lamindi Sonko doing the signing. Unforeseen circumstances prevented him, but next week, inshallah, he will be here. So what's on the menu today? Well, Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has recently been in the Gambia, had fruitful talks with President Adama Barrow. The Justice Minister took to the stage to try and explain some of what has been chopped off and removed from the draft constitution, the 2021, before they resubmitted it this year. Also, Mpox is creeping ever closer to us. They've got it in Nigeria and they've got it in Liberia. So, of course, we should start to get worried. And we'll have a story about that. Also, ECOWAS Parliament, they're here to look at, there have been lots and lots of problems between, free movement of people. The various protocols have been signed many, many years ago, but very little seems to be done on a practical level to make sure that these things are implemented. Also, our friend and colleague Jennifer Sonko is in China right now, and she spoke to some African journalists, I beg your pardon, who are very, very impressed with China's tourism industry. And another story we have in the world of football, the man who once described himself as the smiling coach of the Gambia, Tom Samphié, has been appointed coach of Mali. So these are some of the stories on today's program. So let's get kicking, shall we? First up has to be Spain's Prime Minister. He has been on a kind of West African tour, and one of the people he saw was President Adama Barrow. Here's a snippet. Have a look and have a listen.
The visit is a testament to the excellent relations between the two countries, and the presence of the two leaders to witness the signing of the proposed important agreements is a reaffirmation of their vision and commitment to grow these important bilateral ties. Similarly, since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries in 1965, the two friendly countries have been engaging each other in mutually beneficial relationship with Spanish central government agencies, local governments, NGOs, and individual citizens continuing to intervene in the various sectors of the Gambian economy to support our nation's development. Equally, Gambian migrants continue to be law-abiding and hard-working migrants contributing their quota in the development of both the host country, the Kingdom of Spain, and their country of origin, the Gambia.
Mr. Mboj, I always smile when I play these stories, and we're talking about relations with America, with China, with Spain, and we talk about mutually beneficial. I'm not sure how much Spain has benefited from their relationship with us, but I think we'll let that one go. But nonetheless, Pedro Sanchez, he was here, he signed some protocols, and back home in Spain, being quite controversial, this thing about circular migration. Mr. Mboj, what's that all about?
Absolutely, they call it this sort of famous new policy, as it were. But let's look at what's happening in Spain. First 2 weeks of August, 126% rise, as it were, in the number of votes.
These are the irregular ones, by the way.
Irregular ones, that's really what we're talking about. Irregular migration, this is really what the issue is. And in various areas. So there is a massive problem.
Sure.
That's it. So, and we have to also look at internal politics. They call it socialist left.
Well, that's right.
Let's say you have the right, because right now the only dynamic really in European politics is about migration. Immigration.
In fact, as we speak this weekend in Germany, they think that the far right are about to score massive electoral gains. So yes, you're absolutely right.
That's it. So they've got this temporary, what do they call it? Temporary and circular labor migration project. That's it. That's right. Where they will allow a number of skilled workers
for kind of seasonal work.
Temporary work in Spain, and then they return and that sort of thing.
That's right.
We'll see how that plays out. Obviously, you'll have individuals who will benefit.
Well, that's right.
But what impact, because you want these things to be that impactful policy. Yes. In the bigger scheme of things, what impact?
Yeah, I mean, because,
I'm not sure.
Well, this is it. Because for Spain, I mean, one of the reasons why he's pushed it, Pedro Sanchez and his government, is because they need these workers, because Spanish people are reluctant to do this work, this kind of low-paid work. Some of the people who've been criticizing have been unions, saying that, you know, you're going to bring these people here, pay them very, very low pay. Why don't you pay better and see whether Spanish people will agree to take these jobs? But for the Gambia, of course, the hope is that this will be something that people will go, they'll work, and they'll return with the promise that if they have behaved, they can come again next year and the year after and so on. But of course, you and I know the temptation will be for many. Once they go there, they'll kind of slip through the cracks. And I guess it will be a case of how many return and how many don't.
The end game for Spain really is that can they stop the boats, or at least reduce the number of boats? For them, that's really what the issue is.
Because he went to Mauritania, he went to
Mauritania, went to Senegal, and the like. Yeah. We've seen how difficult this has been.
Yeah, quite.
Look at the English Channel. Didn't the political party in the past elections campaigned on we'll stop the boats, stop the boats, that sort of thing. So it's a massive problem.
And even as we speak, the boats have not been stopped from crossing from France into Britain.
And you look at everything that's been done in the past few years. We've just quoted the figures in the first 2 weeks of August.
Yeah, quite.
It seems as if numbers are going up.
Yep.
Whatever we're doing possibly isn't working, or that it needs time for it to work. You know, that time lag between policy and outcomes.
We've obviously been listening to Pedro Sanchez's speeches and those of his party, because his party was saying that, look, whatever we've done has not worked. We're trying something new, and you might think it's radical, but we think it can work. Why not give it a chance to work and see whether it works? And that's been their argument. But as I said, they're facing from quite kind of a diverse range of people who have been sort of opposing it. Obviously the right wing in the country, but also from unusual resources, which will be, you know, their natural allies. And some of the unions have been opposed because they think that, as I said, they'll just be getting cheap labor.
That's it. Yeah. That's one aspect. And then also, really, the electoral bit. Isn't it, really? Yeah, they must be seen to be making some progress when it comes to making a dent. Yeah. They feel that that's really one of the ways in which they can stop really the far right rise, because really the only dynamic there right now. We've seen it in Britain as well, haven't we? I mean, it's really immigration. Yeah, sure. So that's the key. It depends. Whatever he's doing, can he at least reduce the number of boats, if they can demonstrate statistically that, you know, last week or 6 months ago, we had this number, 36%, we've reduced it by 20%, stuff like that.
That's it.
Then that will appeal perhaps to the electorate, isn't it? Indeed. Really, their main audience is the electorate, the threat of the far right. Sure. So that is really having an impact on immigration policy, isn't it?
It is dominating in Europe, as you rightly say, and it will be interesting to see, because all of us want to see the nuts and bolts of this agreement, and then we can make a kind of informed decision about you know, what's likely to come from it.
But I suspect that we can say these things. We're speculating, obviously. And here the problem is this. We are facing a very strange situation here. It's one of horizon, isn't it? We've talked about here how so many families will sort of go and sell their family china, and the jewelry to pay for somebody to go. Now, you can bring money for me, tell me to start my own business and all the rest of it. But when I look at the horizon, I don't see much prospects in our society.
Yeah, quite.
I will probably try to make some profit to give me the capital to go the back way. Sure. It seems to me that is why most of these entrepreneurships, all of these things, they miss something crucial. There's an immediate economic issue,
this is it.
But there's a wider problem. I call it the horizontal problem, or horizontal, whatever you want to call it. But it's about that horizon. That is why people do what they do. Sure. Only 1 or 2% will succeed. Sure. They will tell you. A lot of people will perish, but 1 or 2 100% will provide, keep the dream alive. People will keep on going.
Sure.
So maybe try what they did with the Somali piracy.
Yeah, sure.
To early 2000s, Gulf of Aden. Remember that concerted effort. You have to be monitoring the seas all the time. You make it extremely difficult. Then maybe you might have a chance of reducing it, but short of that, you're dealing with something much bigger, I think, slightly bigger than economic.
And it's something we will touch on another story in this, because it relates to that again, but we'll see. But thank you for that, Mr. Mbodj. Story number 2, the Justice Minister took to the platform this week to actually address some of the concerns that have been raised around the draft constitution. There have been all sorts of things. It's illegal, it's this, it's that, it's unlawful, they shouldn't have done it that way, they're not allowed to do it that way. And so he wanted to put some facts to the public via the media, and at this press conference he tried to do that. Let's have a look and see whether he succeeded.
Most of the appointments subjected to National Assembly confirmation, whether it's judicial officers, cabinet ministers, and I believe some heads of agencies have been removed. The National Assembly confirmation process have been removed. That's the position of government. That has been our way of governance since independence.
As the press conference progressed, the mood changed as some participants were denied an opportunity to ask their questions. As the press conference quieted down, the Justice Minister was asked about the government's contingency plan should the draft fail like its predecessor.
It's pretty early for us to think of what should we do, because you will be pessimistic then to think that this wouldn't go through. I would encourage all of us to play our part in encouraging one another.
He's being optimistic, Mr. Mbodj. There are so many bits I could have played from that. I could have played the whole press conference. But he's been optimistic. He's dealt with, as he said, some of the myths that said, you're not allowed to tinker with the Constitution and so on. But there's still a long way to go in this whole process, isn't there?
Absolutely, and it was curious there, defending the point about this confirmation process, saying that, well, that's been our way of governance
since independence. Yes, quite.
I can say that first past the post has been our way of governance since independence. That didn't stop us from changing it. So that's not a very strong argument.
It's not really, no.
Yes, you are right. Sort of. Remember, we discussed this a lot. We felt that with the cabinet, or give the president the executive power to
appoint his cabinet.
It's none of the National Assembly's business. It's really the executive. You will judge them in your own way.
That's right. There's a reason why people voted for somebody to be president.
Absolutely. Yes, so we must be giving a lot of executive power. Sure. Look at the president of the U.S. It's a democracy. We all remember the executive directives, decisions that, for instance, Trump took during.
That's right.
So that is it. But here, maybe with the judiciary, I'm not sure about that. Or would it be the Judicial Service Commission?
There's a commission, isn't there? Yes.
That sort of thing. So we should be careful here.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the judicial appointments, and of course there is a commission, isn't there? So something like that. But as you rightly say, for ministers and such like, president's been appointed, let the president get on with appointing who he wants.
Absolutely. And I think that that should be his prerogative. But again, I also think that when it comes to certain commissions, imagine, for instance, the anti-corruption commission.
Yeah, quite.
I would like a National Assembly input in there.
For sure.
Imagine, for instance, the National Human Rights Commission. That as well. So I think that there are certain public agencies. It will be important for the National Assembly really to have that confirmation process. I think so. It's a matter of which one do we identify as that we should be put on the National Assembly confirmation process, and others that should be really for the executive. We should give them that power to appoint these people. So they win or lose together.
Well, this is it. So I was going to say, do you think therefore that at this point it should go possibly back to the Constitution Review Commission before it comes back to it, so that they can do some of these things, or is that a case of, after the National Assembly, then it goes to them before it goes to the people?
Absolutely. But don't you think that's the sort of thing that perhaps the National Assembly itself can do? Let that committee stage.
Yeah, because they can have a committee.
They have that stage in which they can change things.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that it can be even done in the National Assembly. Otherwise, you keep on going back and forth. Yeah. Time is going to drag on. Yeah, so I think the National Assembly can handle it perfectly well.
Sure. Let's see. Let's leave it to them. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now, we thought we'd got over COVID and Ebola and all these other ones ravaging parts of Africa, and now it seems to be Mpox that's doing the damage. And the CRC have been out and they've been making various statements, and the Africa CDC, I beg your pardon, and they've been making statements about what we should do and how we need to be aware. Have a look, have a listen.
Jean Kaseya, the Director General of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, gave an update on the multi-country Mpox outbreak in Africa on Friday. Data from the Africa CDC shows that from the beginning of 2024 to the 23rd of August 2024, 21,466 potential cases of Mpox and 591 deaths have been reported from 13 African Union member countries. They include Burundi, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, the Republic of Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon, Liberia, Kenya, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, and Uganda. The Director General of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the cases and deaths recorded are just the tip of the iceberg, given that Mpox is mostly a mild condition and surveillance, testing, contact tracing is a challenge.
Contact tracing, testing, all of these are challenges, Mr. Mboj, but for us the biggest thing is it seems to be creeping ever closer. When it first kind of broke out in this current phase, it seemed to be Eastern, Southern, Central Africa, and now countries fairly close to us, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire. It's now been registered there, and who knows what next, so I guess that's why we need to be alert.
This sort of pattern has been our current experience in recent years.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So for me, the first question I asked was really, what have we learned from COVID-19?
Yes.
All the lessons were there.
Yeah, quite.
Everything was there, really. So hearing the gentleman there, the Director General of the Africa Centers for Disease Control, say what he said, I'm like, it still feels like COVID-19 all over again.
Absolutely.
So this is really the key. Yeah. And then the vaccines.
Yeah, at the moment only Nigeria in our
region. When the Africa Centers for Disease Control declared a public health emergency, 13th of August.
Yeah, quite, I was going to say.
It was only on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And to Nigeria, they've reported what? 400 cases?
Well, that's right.
Something like that.
Quite.
Look at DR Congo.
Yeah, Congo.
610 have died out of 17,000 last week.
Yeah,
no doubt, possibly numbers have gone up.
Exactly.
It's an unrolling thing.
Yeah, sure.
That's out of 17,000 cases.
Well,
they were struggling. They said, well, during the week, the vaccines would arrive. But have you seen the time lag?
Yeah.
In Europe, what happened in 2022?
when
they had the Mpox, immediately there was a response and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So how are we going to move away from this?
Sure.
Because with these public health emergencies, in the West, they will treat it as an emergency, have that immediate response.
Yes.
But because we do not have really the medicines, the vaccines, and all the rest of it, the Western governments, they don't own these things. They have to work with pharma, there are all sorts of commercial interests.
Well, this is it, yes.
Before they can roll out anything, they're going to deal with the commercial aspect first.
And we saw what that did during COVID.
Then it becomes a public health issue.
That's it.
Had it been over there, it's a public health issue first.
We'll
deal with the commercial after.
That's right.
But for us, it's reversed. You don't have the money. So first, they're going to have to safeguard themselves. This is how capitalism works. So the commercial consideration first. You deal with that. Then it becomes a public emergency.
Sure.
What does that say? You got to put your house in order.
This is it.
Hope this will
I think, as you said, did we learn anything from COVID? Possibly not. But hey, Mr. Mboj, I guess we'll be here again with another disease. Thank you.
That's it. It's been a refrain for God knows how long. When are you going to begin to learn?
Yeah.
And we all know the bottom line is the governance.
Well, of course. Well, this is it. I think in a sense we're grateful here because we have the Medical Research Council, and they've been doing some work locally on Mpox in readiness, and we'll be speaking to them in the sort of days ahead. So, but yeah, fingers crossed until then. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 4, ECOWAS Parliament. They decided to kind of have their meeting here in the Gambia. Why? Because there are lots of protocols that everybody signed, gathering dust on the shelves, but when you get down to the ground, they're not being implemented, they're not being enforced, and they wanted to come and see for themselves about some of these. Have a look, have a listen.
We are very appreciative of the high level of organization you gave this meeting, the excellent hospitality that we receive. We are going back with very special memory of the Gambia for what you've done.
Since the inception of ECOWAS in 1975 and the signing of the protocols of this protocol in 1979, up to this time, there are still challenges. And these are some of the challenges that we want for us to highlight and to address as one family.
There you have Veronica Kadisise from Sierra Leone, and before that, Mr. Snow from Liberia. Mr. Mboj, I deliberately put that bit in because from 1979, we're very good at talking, we're very good at validating these things, but we're very, very, very poor at implementing and enforcing them. And we are where we are with this movement. Is really, really difficult across ECOWAS. And when you consider something was signed as long ago as 1979, you think, why are we still here?
Absolutely. God bless them, these brave souls. Yes, but you don't necessarily blame them. Now we are beginning to see the context. I think now we are beginning to see the scale of our problem. All the sort of the euphoria, the excitement, the hope, and all of that. Our experience is dampening all of that. Once you have these individual nations, central authority has really quite consolidated itself. The way our institutions run, almost verging on the dysfunctional.
Yeah, quite.
When you have all these individual member states, where the state is not quite stable, economically, the stuff that you need to do, because I suspect that you need to reach a certain threshold. Of stability, development with these individual nations.
And it has to be stability across various things,
across various things,
politically, economically, and so on. So all of those, they matter.
They matter. When we even look at, by analogy, as an analogy, look at the development of the European Union from EEC and before that. What sort of things were falling into place that would allow the establishment of these institutional bodies?
Because we seem to want to be getting to more like an EEC first, before we get to an EU type, as it were, even though that is always under threat of unraveling, but we seem to want to go down that route. And as you said, there are all these competing sort of things that different countries have to manage with, and that's why they came here to see what things were like.
Absolutely. So that's really the contradiction at the heart of the matter. But still, it's a good thing that the ECOWAS exists.
Sure.
Gradually you learn to do these things, don't you? You would rather that it's there than it's not.
Yeah,
really.
Quite. Because yes, I'd agree with you, because it's a case of the fact that the protocols are not working is no reason to say they're not good. How do we make them work?
Absolutely.
How can they work?
Yes.
Rather than let's throw them out. Yeah. So,
and really now we are beginning to realize, beginning to wake up to the idea that, oh my God, this is a generational game. This independence thing is a generational game. What is it that I can do now? See, the problem with, I think, some of the leaders, they think that they can do it, so they overstay. They think that they can do it, they're the right ones for it.
I'm the only one.
It's never going to happen. You're going to move on, somebody else will come on. Now we are beginning to get that experience, sort of stealing something from William Blake, our parents in the old, that was the song of innocence.
Right.
The whole of independence and the youth, song of innocence.
Yeah.
Now what you get from us is sort of like the song of experience.
Yeah, indeed.
Slightly different.
Experience is the best teacher, they say.
Absolutely.
But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And story number 5, which will take us to the midway point in terms of stories. Journalists from various African countries, and not just African countries, they're in China on a 4-month media fellowship. Our colleague Jennifer Sonko was there, and she had some interesting chats with some African journalists about tourism, particularly what Africa might learn from China. Have a look, have a listen.
The lessons that I can say that we can learn from China, particularly in Beijing, number 1 is the cleanliness around the city of Beijing, and number 2 is the fact that there's no crime in Beijing. I think the Chinese take the issues around crime and cleanliness very, very seriously. We've had situations in our major cities such as Johannesburg and in eThekwini in Durban, where a lot of our infrastructure has been dilapidated, and also it needs to be cleaned up, where we have a lot of homelessness, a lot of vagabonds, on the streets. It's not all like that. It's a small section of it.
Nigeria does not feature in the top 15 countries in Africa, despite having great natural landmarks, wildlife reserves, and cultural events that should attract tourists from across the world.
Mr. Mboj, that end bit there, Nigeria doesn't feature in these, despite them. I just very, very quickly had first-hand experience of this. I went to an exhibition in Westminster about 20 years ago, and it was kind of come visit Nigeria type exhibition. And when I went around and I saw the displays, there were Nigerians there who were shocked, that looked at it and said, "You mean we have this in Nigeria?" They had no idea, because it had never been sold. Nigeria always depended on its oil wealth and thought, we don't need to do anything else. We don't need to invest, attract investors. We don't need to attract tourists. I mean, there's a list recently of 15 most visited African countries and for tourists, and Nigerians were horrified that they weren't on that list of top 15. It's ridiculous. But these people have gone to China, they've been quite impressed, and they've said, well, but it's a very different thing, isn't it? Trying to emulate the Chinese model in Africa.
Absolutely.
Just need to do our own thing.
When you look at the headline stories, for instance, I got this one. China is ranked 2nd in the world for travel and tourism's contribution to GDP.
And
this was in 2022.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then you go into the details. It's all about domestic tourism.
Yeah.
Especially since they said,
That's right.
after the COVID,
that's right.
they were all locked in. Suddenly they just want to travel.
It's
that contextual, there's a contextual
so
element.
People can,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the gentleman there said cleanliness and no crime.
No crime.
Yes, of course, they contribute something, but let's look at the bigger picture. When it comes to international tourism, it has declined drastically.
Yes, indeed.
Because of the bad press of China.
That's right.
So what I'm saying is, perhaps there are things that you can learn, but also acknowledge the differences, then you will know how to apply the so-called lessons, isn't it?
What works there might not work in your own. Because it's a completely different political system, social, etc. All of these things matter.
They have a massive middle class that's got money.
Quite.
The economy's been doing well for a very long time.
You go to London right now, the number of Chinese visitors you will see, absolutely staggering compared to, say, 20 years ago.
As a source of tourism, extraordinary. The Chinese are going out, unbelievable, because they're rich, they've got that.
That's it,
Now come to Gambia. Today we complain about cost of living. The middle class is small. We have no idea about that. It has shrunk. So you are not going to get the domestic tourism that you want. That is predicated on something else going right. There are always enabling conditions, aren't there?
Well, this is it. And if people are always complaining that they don't have money to spend, it means they're not going to have disposable income, which is what you need to go on holiday either locally or internationally.
Absolutely. So the cleanliness and the no crime or we don't need that for the tourists, we need that for ourselves.
Well, this is it.
See, that shouldn't be.
I kind of cringe when I see
it. Of course.
But having said that, of course, it's one of the reasons why, you know, I'm always banging on about Cape Verde, that when people go there, they always talk about how clean it is. Because, of course, if it is clean, it can. And this is not a made-up story. I remember when I just joined QTV, I was sitting at the first restaurant on the corner of Senegambia there, and there were a Swedish couple who I could hear from the conversation that had been to Gambia before. And then the wife said something which chilled me. She said, honestly, I love this country. But she said, why are so many places so filthy? Yes. I felt ashamed. And it always has stuck with me because I was kind of typing something on my lap, but it made me stop. And then I started to look around. And I thought, you don't know how lucky you are. This is relatively clean where you're sitting in Senegambia. You know, just leave here and go a few hundred meters away. But so it can help, but it's not everything. It's not everything.
That's for us.
Yeah, and we should do it anyway for ourselves.
We should do it for ourselves.
Sure.
It's just as
not because we want tourists.
Not because you know all this tourism issue. So this is the key. How are we going to do it? I really do not know. Most people you meet now, they're all repeat tourists. A good number of them, a high percentage, are all repeat tourists. Sure. So how can you break into new markets
and get this kind of difference?
Get this kind of difference and that sort of thing. And even there, look, we're talking about the foreign ones, international ones. Yeah. With the locals, we don't even have that habit. Of course, we might have school trips, or friends might decide, you know, to take a boat ride to what we used to call James Island. We did that back in the early 90s. This is stuff like that. But this is just for pleasure.
Yeah, quite.
So middle class kids having extra money decide to do stuff like that. Right. It's not a systematic, structured, widespread attitude. We don't have that. How do you change that? I don't know.
This is it. So we look at China, we say, well done, China, but, and just very quickly, one of the things that I thought China had was a complete stroke of luck, and that was when they discovered the terracotta warriors.
Yes,
that's become one of the biggest attractions in China, and that was accident rather than by design.
Absolutely, but propelled so much tourism and
from all over the world.
Absolutely, but now you have certain countervailing factors like their politics, and so liberal people from liberal society. Some people actually they wouldn't want to go there, and they're beginning to see it in the figures. That was why they were pushing the domestic tourism to offset this international fall.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And that takes us to a break, and after the break we will have 5 more stories. Don't go away. Join us after this break.
QCell, the fastest growing network in the Gambia, now presents to you the eSIM. QCell's eSIM allows you to electronically scan a code and join the world of digital SIM cards. Customers with physical SIMs can easily switch to the eSIM as well. So rush now and get connected with an eSIM and start using the latest mobile technology with your trusted GSM operator. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Sinubus. We innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
QCell brings you the future with our ultimate bundles. Enjoy the best voice and data bundle plans in one package. Get unlimited data packages with flexible validity and enjoy what true internet feels like. Get 30 minutes of on-net and off-net calls with 5 gigabytes of data for just $350. Or get bigger bundle packages from 10 gigabytes to 20 gigabytes with over 100 on-net and off-net voice calls and enjoy the fastest internet speed in the Gambia. You can also buy 1-day, 3-day or even 7-day packages and enjoy unlimited data bundles with uncapped speeds. Just dial *343# today and experience the limitless capabilities of the QCell network. *343# should be your favorite code to dial now. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell. We innovate, others follow.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Weekend Review. I'm Ade Darami, and here to go through the stories with me, friend and colleague Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, thank you for the 5 that you've contributed to so far. And for the eagle-eyed regular viewers, you will notice that our usual signing interpreter, Lamindi Sonko, is not with us this week, but fear not, he'll be back next week, inshallah. And we've had 5 stories that you've missed if you're just joining us, but still 5 more to go, so do not despair. Story number 6. There was a recent shooting incident near Senegambia, which is the kind of tourism area, in case you're outside of the Gambia and you're thinking, Senegambia, isn't that the kind of conjunction of Senegal and Gambia joining? No, there's an area called Senegambia, which is a kind of tourist hotspot. This incident happened, and there was a lot of comment on social media and on the regular media. So the Gambia Armed Forces thought they should come out and clarify matters. Here's what they had to say.
A checkpoint was mounted by our personnel from the State Guards, and up to around 2:30 a.m. a vehicle approached the checkpoint and with top speed knocked down 2 cones and still refused to stop. The guards on the checkpoints even signaled to the driver to reduce his speed or to stop, but he did not heed and nearly, in fact, ran over one of the soldiers who had to dive away to avoid a fatal collision. It was until the intervention of the cutoffs that were right after the checkpoint, who, in an attempt to disable and also to stop the vehicle, the soldiers aimed at the back tire of the vehicle in an attempt to stop the vehicle. However, the rounds from the shots that were fired ricocheted, and also the shrapnel from the rounds led to an injury of one of the vehicle occupants.
So that's for anybody who wasn't up to speed with the Army's explanation of what happened, Mr. Mboj. It was interesting that when this was broadcast, it sparked a debate in the office, and a couple of people were saying, oh, these people, they're just trigger happy. The kind of cynicism there is that even when there was this explanation from the Army PRO that this is what happened, which seemed to make sense, there was still a kind of cynicism that, oh no, they just wanted to shoot. But I mean, they tried, that they had to come out and say something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And should you ask them, okay, what is the evidence for saying that they're trigger happy? How many times in the past year, for instance? This is stuff like that. Then they begin to stutter because there's really no evidence behind it. There's no data. It's just an impression, a feeling, that sort of thing. A lot of people speak at that level. So this is it for us. Well, for me, certainly the question is, what were these people? There were 5 of them. I think 5 were arrested. Right. Yes. What were they on? What's going on here? Well, the PRO, when we invited him on this morning, said that they could smell alcohol
on them.
Was it just some hoodlum, as it were? Once you've taken alcohol, then your judgment is clouded. So you're just out of the ride. 2 a.m. You have a freeway. You see, this is our freeway, isn't it?
And you might just not be thinking that, Yeah, because I've been at one of these where it's been so hot that even though there's meant to be a checkpoint, admittedly it was midday, and the soldiers were off the road and sheltering from the heat of the sun. So I didn't stop, but then I just heard shouting behind me. We were going towards Gonjo at the time. We'd gone past Gonjo, and I was like, what was that noise? And then I looked in my rear view mirror, and there were these people waving frantically. I'm like, well, no, if you want a checkpoint, stand under the hot sun and stop me. I'm not the one to be looking for you. You weren't there. But this was, as you said, 2 a.m. You think the roads are clear, and perhaps you were just speeding.
That's it. But again, you drive through 2 cones. That's what they've said. And you nearly ran over one person
who was trying to
This
stop.
is according to their version. Of it, so all of these things. So naturally, you've got to stop that. So they shoot shot at the tire. This is what you see people do all around the world.
Indeed.
Security forces do all around the world.
Indeed.
One person got injured. So let's get to the bottom of it.
Sure.
But then keep it within its context, isn't it? So the sort of hyperbole that comes out,
we should start being worried about the army and all that kind of nonsense.
That sort of thing. No, I haven't seen that. Let's just have transparency.
Sure, indeed,
What actually happened, then maybe that could be quite reassuring. We need transparency.
Yes. And from the occupants and the injured party, we might hear their side of the story as the week goes on. Sure.
That's it. It's only by transparency that perhaps you can get some trust, which you need between authorities and civilian society. That's how we can work together, isn't it?
That's it.
But we need to feel that the whole process is transparent and accountable
open,
and stuff like that.
Sure, thank you. So we'll wait and see, and we will follow that one. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 7, the Higher Education Ministry. They recently announced about the implementation of a $92.7 million fund. What's that fund? Have a look and find out.
We're setting up this innovative skills innovation kind of like fund, which is really, really good, which I hope is going to be a game changer. Because if you look at education that is not functional, that is not relevant, that is not responsive to the needs of the people, then it is not good education. So if we got a lot of problems in society and our education system is not able to adequately respond to the needs of the people, the needs of the young people, the unemployed, industry needs, about hopelessness, about anything to do with development, if we have got basic things that can be manufactured here, but they're not being manufactured here, hopefully the skill funds allows this pivot component to develop the entrepreneurship, the innovation, the funding that is required to develop an entrepreneurial ecosystem within the TVET sector.
And we cut them off there in mid-sentence almost, but it's the Skills, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Fund is the fund we're talking about, Mr. Mboj. And we've seen it in other countries where they've kind of put a fund together to kind of stimulate things. And he talked there about, education that's kind of basically not fit for purpose. How do we kind of channel things by kind of offering something? If you have a good idea, you can tap into this fund and you can get it. And the reason they had this is because many people didn't seem to be aware of the fund or how they could access it.
Absolutely, and then the fact that this project is anchored on 3 windows,
that's right.
The institutions, the training, as it were, relevant skills, and the entrepreneurship element.
That's right.
Absolutely, and perhaps the first focus would be the training of trainers.
Quite.
When I was at Quantum Net Institute of Technology, I realized that it was very weak in the training of trainers. That is why we tend to fall back. We tend to fall way below when it comes to measuring outcomes.
Sure.
Isn't it?
Yes.
We are very good with enrolling.
Exactly,
you can enroll them, but you want to get the right learning outcomes.
Because that's the only sustainable thing, really, if you train the trainers so that people can come, they can train, and they can train others because they reach that kind of standard and bring people up to that standard.
I think that was very important. When we were there at QIT, we realized that this was important. So once in a while, we'll get a trainer to come and train our trainers. I could be brilliant doing all sorts of things, systems administration or networking and all of that, but I may not be good at imparting it.
Quite.
See, that the skills of teaching, they're completely different. I could be a brilliant person, but I can't do that. So we need to get that right. That's a crucial chunk of it. So you do see that today, really, we've seen it. A lot of people will leave the institution. They've got a paper. Now go and test them practically what they do. You hear you hear complaints all the time from employers.
We see it. I'm one of those employers complaining.
So let us focus on really getting the right outcomes. I think that is really the heart of this matter. Really.
Thank you. So we look forward to the fund, and it's called the Skills, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Fund. Look it up, and the Higher Education Ministry are the ones who are kind of in charge of kind of rolling it out and engaging with the public. So keep your eye out for that one. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 8, kind of slightly related, because we heard the gentleman there talk about things that should be manufactured here in the Gambia that are not. Well, there's this thing called the Trans-Gambia Road Transport Corridor. Heard of it? You see? You probably haven't. But it's a linkage that should actually go right the way from Dakar through Banjul right across West Africa, but it's not really been working. And now they're trying to stimulate to see whether it can work again. Have a look, have a listen.
This is a project we actually very excited about. So we came in here to bring His Excellency to the understanding of what we are trying to do over there, so that the economic transformation agenda he has for this country can be made a reality. It took about an hour, but he patiently went through it. And in the end, he gave us what we were all waiting for, which is the endorsement and support of his government to ensure that this investment is made. We are able to bring industrial transformation to the Gambia in the real sense and make this happen in the regions and not in the city of Banjul.
Industrialization in the regions and not just in the Banjul. And as I said, this corridor, imagine a road that stretched from Dakar all the way through, right through to Lagos.
To Lagos, absolutely.
And either side of that, you have businesses. So in terms of transportation, they don't have to go far. You can just drive from the factory to the road. But they talk about setting up kind of special economic zones, which would then be where some of this light manufacturing possibly can be, or even heavy manufacturing. For how many years have we been complaining about iron ore being extracted from Africa, sent abroad, and then we buy the corrugated iron and roof our houses with it from, you know, something the raw material comes from here. And it's only recently that it's now being manufactured in Africa. So something similar.
Absolutely. The economic one is one aspect. It is also a strategic link.
Indeed.
You see, we want this, what do you call it, one market, single market, as it were, in ECOWAS and eventually whatever.
Well, that's
so
right.
that's exactly it. So I love the idea that they're conducting a study. Essentially, that's what it is, isn't it?
Indeed, yes. That's
what
right.
are the opportunities?
What is it? What was feasible?
That's it.
Quite,
you know, given it's an economic and strategic link, how can we exploit it commercially?
Yeah, quite.
He said, the minister said that they want to attract investment.
Yes,
That's
because
it.
you're talking about setting up special economic zones, as you said, not in the
Exactly,
cities,
yes.
but, you know, along the kind of rural areas, or to stop the kind of rural-urban drift, amongst other things, provide employment, and of course, you know, manufacture stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do we do it? So it's a fantastic idea. Let us get the study, get the picture, you know, what's possible, the feasibility of certain things. Then we see where you can take it next. It's good thinking. Then we just wait to see the outcomes.
With fingers crossed, of course. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now, many of us parents and grandparents, you know, these days we talk about the facility, the ease with which our children use mobile phones, or they go online and access stuff. But also there have been concerns about, you know, possible, you know, abuse of children and vulnerable people online. But what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? What have we been doing about it? Very little, it seems. Have a look and have a listen to this.
The Gambia, we do not have any comprehensive policy or strategy that deals with issues of online child abuse, issues that are related to abuse of vulnerable groups in the cyberspace or on the online media. So we thought it's fitting to ensure that we have a comprehensive national policy and also some standards that internet service providers would agree upon to encourage awareness-raising programs, as well as other content providers and other general stakeholders.
Mr. Mboj, gentleman there, many things he said, no national policy, no comprehensive strategy, but he also wants to bring in or throw some of the responsibility to internet service providers and content providers. Quite a task.
That's it, and that's what we've seen in the West.
Yeah.
All this talk about X, from
well,
Twitter, Facebook,
like
all of
X
that.
currently banned in Brazil.
Banned in Brazil,
as
exactly.
We speak.
It should be your responsibility.
Telegram, they've just arrested because they've said because of things, including, interestingly, they've talked about, you know, images of child abuse and that sort of thing that were taking sort of place through the platform, and he was refusing to kind of give them some of the evidence that they requested.
Yes,
so
and so far we didn't have a policy strategy and that sort of thing. I'm not surprised really. Even in the West, it's only recently that they've been putting these
because they're kind of running to catch up with.
They're running to catch up with technology. That's the way it is. So obviously, what they're doing is a good thing, and we've got some cybersecurity laws.
Well, that's right.
But not comprehensive.
Not comprehensive.
They don't cover abuse of children online and all the rest of it. That's absolutely true. What can we do now? How can government, for instance, collaborate with perhaps NGOs and internet service providers and other providers? What is it that we can do? You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of aiming for low-hanging fruit. What is it that you can do? And yes, the awareness aspect would be very important. Most homes you go to today, you have young people there, slightly elder. So can we have the elder people, the older boys or girls, taking care of the younger ones, as it were? Because that's how it will help. I think it's just in the home what parents will do. Be careful where your children go.
Well,
you see, the traditional sort of strict family, the kids, you cannot go out and play too much, and your parents will know where you are. I think they will be able to handle it well. They can protect their kids more, but you have other families that wouldn't do that. So they might be more vulnerable to that. So you have to be really interested. What's your kid watching? What are they doing? And then that's how well are you talking to your kids? So it will take all sorts. But certain kids will get more protection given the kind of family they're from. Well, others wouldn't. That's really what the reality is now.
Sure. And that's what we have to deal with, the reality.
We have to deal with the reality.
So let's hope they bring everybody together to kind of formulate this policy.
Absolutely.
Parents, children,
and the awareness. We must be talking more, isn't it?
Yeah,
so perhaps NGOs, will need NGOs in this area. And the media as well.
Big time.
That's it. So perhaps you can help families in there. Because the state really is not strong enough to do certain things. You may have the laws there. We have so many laws in there. But the implementation, we all know the problems with that.
Big problems, usually.
So maybe civil society, there are certain things we must take back and help others. You know what I mean? Just help around.
This is it. Everybody, all hands on deck, as we love to say here. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And our final story. He called himself famously that even as he was leaving us, he said, "I will always be the smiling coach of the Gambia." Tom Samphié, of course. He's left us, he went to the Philippines, but now he's ended up back in West Africa. Where? In Mali. Have a look, have a listen.
Contract, which is 2 years long, with a chance of extension, comes with higher expectation than his two most recent jobs with the Philippines national team, which he only took in February, shortly after leaving the Gambia. Leaving the Philippines job meant activating a clause that allows him to return to African football. Femafoot has set lofty goals for the new head coach, including reaching the semi-finals of AFCON 2025 in Morocco and clinching Mali's qualification to the 2026 World Cup, something the nation has never achieved. Samphié inherits a team of talented players, many of whom play in some of the world's top leagues.
Echoes of Gambia here. We said that one of the reasons Tom Samphié was able to qualify Gambia for successive was because he inherited a team of talented players. The relationship slightly soured towards the end because the Gambians wanted the kind of gung-ho football that he wasn't prepared to play based on the team he had. But he seems to have landed on his feet big time. Now Mali, but what a task they've given him.
Absolutely, and to be fair to him, yes, he inherited talent, but you have to make the talent go out on the pitch and work
and
win it to get the stuff right. Absolutely. So all we can say to Tom Samphié in many ways is thank you.
Yeah,
it was during his watch that we qualified to AFCON.
Yes, twice.
Get it twice, came to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, the first time around.
So all I can say is good luck. Yeah, it's a tall order to reach the semis and qualify for the World Cup and all the rest of it.
I think the World Cup one, it might not be as daunting as it sounds because there are more African teams that will be allowed to the next World Cup. So, the numbers increase. So it means the chances are better for some of these big teams. Like Mali is definitely one of the big teams in Africa. But I smiled there when Gajagaj said the expectations might not be as high. Even when he was coach of Gambia, the expectations amongst the Gambian public were certainly high, and there was disappointment when they only got as far as the quarterfinals. I think many Gambians wanted to go all the way to the final and even win the thing.
That's how it goes, isn't it? Each time I think you get a new coach.
Yeah, quite.
And I think that in itself generates so much euphoria and expectation and all the rest of it. It's all fair for it to be so. I'm not going to knock it. I think the semi-finals of AFCON, impossible. Well, he did the impossible with us. If you know what I mean, you've never qualified before, but then during his watch, we qualified. So you just never know. I can only wish him luck.
And me too.
Yes. So if we're going to talk about having all these foreign coaches coming to Africa and all the rest of it, that's a different topic, isn't it? That's really a different topic.
But interestingly, of course, he had this clause in his Philippines contract that if an African job comes along, can you release me? Because he was only appointed in February in the Philippines.
It will be interesting to know why his preference for Africa, why is that, and the like. So with Mali, good luck. The Malian Federation decided to give him the job.
Indeed.
They had other applicants, decided to give it to him.
High-ranking ones, and in fact I was shocked. Conceição, the Portuguese guy. You had Pizzo Mosamani, and Hector Cooper, the Argentine guy. The final four. See the people, all of them with much higher international profiles than Tom, and yet Tom got the job.
They give it to him. So good luck to them.
Good luck to you, Tom, and we wish you well. Thank you for that, Mr. Mborj. And it just remains for me to say once again, for the eagle-eyed, there was no Lamindi Sonko this week, but nonetheless, we hope that has not spoiled the viewing. And until we come your way again next week, goodbye.